You seem to still be up there somewhere.
Maybe I am. There are flying saucers.
Supposing they're Martians or something in there.
Hey guys, welcome back to another Weird Wednesday. I'm Asherz, and this is...
Tobias.
Tobias, happy birthday!
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody, it's Tobias Whalen's birthday today. You know, I gotta say, you look great for 29. You really do.
I really appreciate that. Yes, I am. I'm 76 years young today.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, that's true.
So...
Well, you're doing all right for yourself, I think. You're not retired yet. You know, I think you knew that in this economy today, it's like not a possibility. So here we are.
Sure. Yeah, I'll have to work until I die. Just, I mean, you know, living the American dream, work until you die.
Anyway, how was your weekend?
It was great. It was great. Emily and I went down to the second annual Goatman Festival in Louisville, Kentucky. And it was a lot of fun. They got a nice little event down there. I didn't go to the first one, but I heard that this year it had grown. So that's good. And I hope that it continues to, because it was a very pleasant experience. There were a lot of really cool vendors. There were some good speakers there. The attendees were all just amazing, honestly. Like, I don't know how super into, you know, cryptids necessarily they were. I mean, certainly everybody there had at least a passing interest, but it didn't matter because, you know, they were curious and outgoing and just generally pleasant to interact with, you know, like just good people. And they love buying my books, which, I mean, that's like the best quality a person can have. So that was really great. Yeah, it was nice. It was really, really nice. And hopefully, you know, we'll get back down there again. We have some friends that live down there, which unfortunately we couldn't see this trip, but we're always looking for excuses to go down to Louisville just to see everybody we know that lives there. So yeah, it was good. No complaints.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, I had probably the best weekend I've had for a long time. So that's great. I went.
Wow.
I know it was pretty solid. I went Friday. I saw Terrifier 3.
How was that?
Man, great fucking movie. Okay, so I do have a complaint. It's not about the movie. So nowadays when you go to the movie theater, you pick your seat. At least in most major theaters, that's how it is, right? They
Well,
got the
yeah, we're
really
not
fucking seats.
barbarians. I'm not sitting next to a stranger if I don't have to. At least not without an armrest.
Right? You see what I'm saying? So you go. I buy my ticket on the app ahead of time. I bought my ticket way ahead of time and was ready to go and had my seat picked out. And of course, somebody fucking sits next to me, and it's like, dude, you know, looking at the row of seats, I'm one person. Okay, it was like a group of 5, but there was like plenty of other fucking seats in the same row. They could have like scooted down just one, but no, they bought their fucking tickets right beside me, and it was so fucking weird the whole time. It's a single guy. So it's 5 people. It's a single guy there with 2 couples, and that just made it all the fucking weirder, right?
And so you okay? Because I'm assuming this had the standard setup of like love seats, and then there's like an armrest you can put down in the middle of them, like that.
Well, yeah, there's a shared armrest, yeah, between
Yeah.
in the big reclining chairs, yeah, and
Yeah,
so
well, because they're like love seats, and they're meant to sit 2 people. Because, you know, if you're there with a date or something.
ours are
But
just chairs, so we don't have the love seat situation. Which thank God, because that sounds messy. But
Oh, okay. So, he didn't. Okay, so like, yeah, the polite thing there to do is in a chair situation.
leave
People,
a space. Leave a
yes.
chair.
If for anybody listening, just you leave a 1 chair buffer between you and anybody you don't know in any situation. Hell, between people you do know, you leave a 1 chair buffer most of the time.
Yeah. So it was fucking weird, you know. In our seats, there's like a tray that like you can move it in front of you or like move it back, but it doesn't like extend all the way out. So like if you have to get up to go to the bathroom, you kind of have to like get up and navigate like your tray and the other person's tray, and it's
Oh
just a fucking,
no.
it was a whole issue. We didn't talk to each other the whole time. I probably looked fucking weird because I'm going and seeing Terrifier 3 by myself. You know,
I
which was
mean,
probably strange to people. My mom thinks it's weird I go to the movies. I worked at that theater specifically for like half a decade, and I go to the movies by myself a lot. I don't mind it.
that's
Why?
not weird.
It's not weird, right? Why go with another person? You're there to watch the movie.
Yeah, I used
I
to go
invite
by
people.
myself all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I invite people to go, and if nobody goes, it's no big deal. Like I'm still gonna go see my movie. Like that's not gonna stop me. But anyway, so that was a whole thing. But I watched the movie. Fucking awesome. I still think I liked 2 better. I don't know. They're both pretty equal.
Okay.
I've become a huge fan of Art the Clown, and it's funny because if you listen to the older episodes of the show, or maybe you've listened for a long time, I talked about my weekend at one point where I watched Terrifier, the first Terrifier, and I didn't get it. I was like, I don't know why people like this character. It's weird. It's not good. And once 2 came out, that's when I became a true art believer. I don't know, something clicked in my head. I was like, I get it now. I totally understand this character.
I have a hard time being a fan of a character like that. I can appreciate how well the character is portrayed, and I think that Art is portrayed, very well
Very
in
well.
in
Yeah.
those films. But he also is a total piece of shit, and I fucking
He
hate him.
is.
I
Yes.
fucking hate him more than I just a visceral. And I'm sure this is what you're supposed to. This is the response I assume you're supposed to have, this visceral hatred for this character because he is so awful to people. And so I could never. Okay, you know how when you're watching like Friday the 13th and like the camp counselors are pretty irritating, and you're just like waiting around for Jason to show up just to get this show on the road. I never experienced that with Terrifier because none of those people deserve any of that, and it's so awful what happens to them.
Oh yeah.
Art he is not cool. He is not like something to aspire to be. You should
Oh
not
no.
sympathize, empathize, relate to, or anything else like with this fucking character.
Yeah. And exactly. Yes. I mean, definitely the most brutal slasher we've ever seen. And that's why like it took a long time. Like in the first Terrifier movie when he pulls out a gun, that's cheating. Like
It is.
I mean, that's in a slasher movie, like they don't have guns, but Art, he does. He doesn't give a fuck. It totally breaks the rules of your conventional slasher. And when I saw the first Terrifier, I was like, well, fuck, man, this is just gore for gore's sake. And even though that is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
I appreciate the practical effects. I appreciate the storyline that they've started building, the lore that they've started building onto the character. So anyway, the point being, it took a while for me to enjoy it. But now I do. Now I'm totally here for it. I can't wait for Terrifier 4. It was a great film. It was an 8 out of 10 horror movie and a 10 out of 10 Christmas movie. So that was my
Nice. I'll definitely check it
um,
out. I always felt like what that first movie needed was a final girl that you could root for.
yes.
And
Yeah.
I think we got that in 2. And I
Right.
mean, no spoilers, but the reviews and things that I've read seem to imply that carries forward into 3. So if that's the case, I'm gonna like this franchise a lot more. If there
Yeah.
is like a final girl, some kind of heroine that I can root for to win against this fucking asshole, then that's great. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. And it's just goofy. I mean, some of it's real fucking goofy. Even though it's bloody and gross, it's still really over the top.
Right. Oh no, it
Um,
is. It
and
is.
I appreciate that. I didn't initially, but yeah, now I do. And it just ramps it up even more in the third one. Is it grosser? There's that one scene in 2, and when I say that one scene, I think everybody knows what I'm talking about.
Sure.
I didn't feel like anything topped that in the third movie, but there's definitely a lot more kills. So be prepared for that if you do go
Okay.
check it out. If you don't like it for the kills, then you're not going to like it. So, but anyway, at the very end of it, And I know I'm going to run out of time, and I think I'm going to dig into our news time a little bit to talk about my
I
crazy
don't
weekend
have
I
any
had.
news, so
Oh, good.
go
I have
nuts.
one news, so it'll be fine. But at the very end, the group of people leave. Usually, I'll wait, around for people to go. I'm not in a hurry to leave the theater. And some guy comes up to me who was sitting on the opposite end of my row, and he comes up and he said, "Did you watch this by yourself?" I was like, yeah, I did." And he was like, "Oh, me too. I felt weird about it, but now that you're here, I don't feel weird about it."
Nice.
I was like, it's not, just to bring it back to what I was saying in the beginning, it's not fucking weird to go see a movie by yourself. That doesn't matter what it is. Like,
No.
you can do that. That's normal.
Yeah, that's not weird at all. It's actually my preferred way to see a movie. Like
Yeah.
I don't like to go in a group. Like at most, I'll want to go with like Emily. But if she doesn't want to see it, I'll see it. I'll just go by myself.
Right. I mean, it's totally okay. So, that happened. And then Saturday was it was the Fairborn Halloween Festival, which is a big deal here. So in Fairborn, Ohio, it's known as Halloween City, basically. Fairborn has the world famous Foy's Halloween store, and it's not just one Halloween store. It's like 5 different stores on like the main strip in Fairborn, and they're open year round. So like the different stores are dedicated to different things. They've got one that's just a costume store. They've got one that's just a costume store for kids. They've got their like haunted house store where you buy like your props and things like that. I mean, it's kind of a big deal. So, of course, every year the city holds a festival, and man, they get really into it. Which is real. I mean, it's really neat. It's free to attend the festival itself. And just even like the houses that are on that same strip have like some of the most extreme Halloween decor you've ever seen in your entire life. It's crazy. But that was a lot of fun. My friend Cherish owns one of the stores on the block, which I've talked about before on the show. It's an oddity shop, right? So she owns. It's called the Secret Chamber House. Go check it out. Where like you get, kind of the spooky stuff with Foy's, but you get the real deal at the Secret Chamber House. Real human body parts, a whole real human, as a matter of fact. Fiji mermaids, and there was an alligator dressed up like a bride this time around. It was wonderful. All kinds of, spooky shit that you can get into. So I stopped and talked to Cherish for a while. While I'm leaving the store, so Jeff Craig, cartographer Jeff Craig,
Sure.
who puts on Frogman Festival every year, and also makes the map in black, also makes a hidden Ohio map. He has one just for Ohio for you to road trip all around Ohio. And I was like opening it up, and she had like a bunch of cashiers kind of up front where the maps were that were helping her with the store that I don't know. And I'm like opening up the one map because I was showing my daughter that I'm in the map. Or there's a little advertisement for our show in the Hidden Ohio map. And when I started opening up, the girl was like, "Oh, be careful! It opens up real big." And Jeff did marketing genius. Jeff's been stuffing the Frogman Festival flyers into the maps, and one dropped out, and I was like, "Oh, I know." And I turned the postcard around, and there I am, listed as a speaker. I said, "That's me." And of course, she's like, "Oh yeah, I thought I recognized you." Blah 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 blah. Anyway, I'm talking about this because my mom is with me, and I think that it really surprised her that somebody knew who I was, or thought I was cool or something because of the stuff that I do. I think that she kind of really separates that part of my life from her relationship with me, which is totally normal. But
Sure.
it was I got a kick out of it. I kind of
That's
enjoyed that.
nice.
She's like, "Do people just like do they like come up to you and like want to take their picture with you and stuff?" And I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "I don't go to Kroger and people are like, 'Oh, it's Asherz.' Oh my god, we gotta take." I'm like, it's usually at like
Right.
events, but yeah, sometimes.
Sure. Yeah, I had people that wanted to take their pictures with me after my talk at Goatman, and that's
Right.
totally normal. And I'm sure you have the same experience.
Yeah. So it was just a funny, it was a weird interaction of like, my two lives colliding together. It hasn't really happened before. So that was neat. And then of course we went, and the same day, so not Fairborn, Ohio, but these are all Dayton suburbs. Huber Heights, Ohio, is doing like a citywide scavenger hunt. So they really get into their home decor, Halloween decor up here in Huber, and they're hosting a little scavenger hunt this year. There's 31 houses to go see and find something special about them. And we did that for a little bit. We knocked out about a third of the houses on the list. We're going to continue to do it for the rest of the season. And then Sunday we just kept the good times going. We went to a little farm, and you know what farms are like during the fall. And
Sure.
it made me wonder, Tobias. You know what farms are like during the fall.
I do.
Is this just a Midwest thing?
Ooh, maybe. Why? Do other people not like go apple picking and
Hay
go to like,
rides and
yeah, pumpkin festivals and stuff?
I don't think so because like people in the desert don't do that, right? Like the
I
people in
would
Nevada,
assume not.
you know
Yeah,
what I
I feel
mean?
bad for them now because that's like a quintessential fall activity.
That's right. That's like fall. They're like, you go and hang out with a bunch of corn. Hell yeah, I do. It's fucking sweet.
Oh yeah, go to a corn maze. Yeah, that's a good one.
Right. Do they have corn maze in like Nevada? I don't know. So
They're just importing fields of corn to make mazes in Las Vegas now.
I mean, what are you gonna? How do you? Because I mean, that's like you see that type of trope in like horror movies, right? So like, surely the rest of the world knows about this, but maybe it is a, like mostly Midwestern thing.
I guess it would have to be. They probably have their own stuff though, where they're like, oh, what? Does everybody not have
Cactus
desert
maze.
mazes or whatever they do?
You guys don't pick off the cactus needles in a bed and lay down in them like we do with the corn kernels.
Oh, like the cactus needle bed. That's my favorite.
Do they do hay rides? I don't know. But it made me question. I had too many apple ciders the whole weekend. It was just fall and Halloween and autumn fun all weekend. So
That's great. I'm happy for you. That sounds like a lovely weekend.
but the important part, I have to add something bad. It can't be perfect, right?
Okay.
And I got stung by a fucking bee.
Motherfucking bee.
Right. So angry about it. And I don't know what I'm more angry about. The fact that I got stung by a bee or the fact that it died because it stung me. Like, on one hand, I'm like, well, good. On the other hand, I'm like, oh no, the bees.
Yeah, right. What a waste. What a waste of a life, bee.
Right.
You had a choice. You didn't have to sting Asherz and then die. You could have just went on pollinating plants and helping the environment. But no, you took the easy way out, you piece of shit.
I didn't even threaten it. I'm not even threatening. So it's like, why did you do this? So, anyway, that was my weekend.
That's nice.
But like I mentioned, I do have a news.
Oh, good.
And I wanted to share it with everybody. So this is pretty topical to our drug-induced cannibalism episode, and kind of something I've been watching. So it's gonna get a little gross. So a Kentucky woman has been charged with murder after her mother's body was found dismembered and cooked in an oven inside their home.
Yikes.
So I think her name is Toralina Fields. I believe she was living with her mother at the time. There was a maintenance worker that had come to the house the day before. Everything was fine, and he went to come back the next day. And when he came back the next day, nobody was answering the door. So he kind of went around back, to try to get in to do his job or whatever. And he found a bloody mattress outside, and walked around a little bit further and found the remains of Miss Fields' mother. Obviously missing some parts. Of course, he does the right thing. He calls the police, and the police kind of had a standoff with Miss Fields inside the home. And eventually, when she did let them in, like I said, they found cooked body parts in her oven. Various body parts strewn all over the place. She herself was covered in blood. A very gruesome crime scene. Now, the maintenance guy said the day before he was there and everything seemed just fine. So, I've been kind of watching this because it's not old news. It did come out a little later in the week, but so far no accusations of drug use. But I wouldn't be surprised if that happens.
Right.
To me, and I don't know this woman. I'm not gonna act like we've had a conversation, but it seems like she's suffered some type of mental health issue, a mental health episode, and that's why she did this. So I don't know. Interesting. Don't
That seems likely, considering.
something, right? Is at this time, is it drug induced? I'm not going to be the first one to start that rumor. But just watch the media for it, because they do love that. They love
That's
saying
true.
that.
If you
So
wanted to be the first one to start the rumor, I wouldn't stop you.
it was probably drugs. It
You
was
can do okay. There it is. You can go ahead. It's fine.
Who knows what the new drugs are? It's whatever that new drug is now that they're selling at the gas station.
Yes, it was probably that drug that your mom emailed you about recently to watch out for in the Halloween candy. And if it wasn't that, it was demons.
It was definitely demon. She was demon possessed. Clearly, there's a zombie outbreak getting ready to happen.
Right.
No, not to make light of the situation. That's a terrible situation, I guess. I
It
mean, I
is.
don't know. If anybody's gonna like kill me and then cook me, I guess who better than my own child?
Oh God. Yeah. I mean, I'm not making light of the victim or the crime.
No.
What I'm making fun of is how people react to things like that, and the reasons or motivations that they try to ascribe to the perpetrators to make it make sense to themselves. Um, we may never know. It's
Well,
in these cases, it's likely, really, that we just never really know why this happened, and it doesn't make it any less tragic.
oh
It
yeah.
wouldn't make it any less tragic to know the reason. Frankly, this is a horrible thing that happened.
One of the headlines said spell casting, murder, and cannibalism. I don't really know where the spell casting part has come from. So the media is definitely already. So you were right, demons. You had that one.
Oh, good.
It's
I can
already
check that off
trying.
my bingo card.
Yeah, trying to spin something. But in that headline, um, on one of it was on Facebook that I saw that headline. Um, people are commenting on it, and somebody commented, um, I hope she gets better.
What? Who? Which one? The
Right?
mom? I think that ship has sailed, my friend.
People are like, well, she's dead, so. uh, and it just, what? In a very dark situation, you gotta find the silver lining somewhere. So it reminds me of that meme of like the roadkill, and it's got I think it's a raccoon, and there's a balloon, a get well soon balloon tied to it.
God. Sending thoughts and prayers.
Right. I hope she gets better. I I hope so too.
Yeah, we all do.
Genuinely. So yeah, like I said, I'll keep kind of watching it. It's not every day that you get that kind of headline. So we'll see
No,
if it
I
was
mean,
really
thank
one.
God. Like that's
Yeah, right.
pretty bad.
We'll see what happens there. But again, I thought it was pretty topical considering we kind of just covered stuff like this. So
Oh yeah, well, and if the media is already throwing out spell casting and cannibalism and everything else, it fits in perfectly with with what we're doing here. So we have to cover it.
yeah, we don't know. Yeah, we don't know if she actually ate her mom. We just know she cooked her.
Yeah,
That's the
right. Well,
difference.
we don't know, and the media doesn't know, but that's never stopped them from saying it anyway.
It's a very good point. It's a very good point. So you didn't have a news this week. It's okay if you don't.
No, I have been so busy lately that I do not have any news this week. I have been, other than Wisconsin, the state in which I live. I did this math earlier, and it blew my mind. Since September 19th, which is when I left for Point Pleasant, I have been in 6 different states and driven over 50 hours to different events. So this has been a very busy few weeks for me. And I've been hanging in there and I'm happy to be here. But yeah, again, and I'm blessed for the opportunities to do all the amazing things that I have done. Believe me, I'm not complaining about it. It's just been a lot. And so There wasn't anything that felt like so pressing to me that I just had to push myself to get it done this week. So no news.
Yeah, I'm going to put a request out to our listeners for news. I want you guys to give me some news because even though I haven't been traveling all over like Tobias has, I now work 2 regular people jobs and I'm very tired. But I keep seeing people post about this thing that they're referring to as maybe you've heard of this, Tobias, the Immaculate Constellation.
No.
Haven't heard of it? Oh, thank God you haven't. I think that from what I understand, and this is why I want you guys to give me the information. I am too tired to go look for it. I'm just going to level with you. But from my understanding, a whistleblower has allegedly come forward that Immaculate Constellation is a United States government program to collect crash debris from UAPs. And that is the name of it, and it's been going on since 2017. And this is like all kind of coming out. And you guys, yes, I'm kind of interested. You guys know how I feel about the government and this UAP bullshit. But I'm too tired to wade through the Twitter bros, the UFO bros, and all the bullshit. If you guys have a good resource on this, send it my way. And you know what I mean by good resource. You listen to the show. Don't send me a YouTube video. I won't watch it.
No.
But if you got
Never.
some good reading, I'm interested, and maybe next week once I catch up, we'll kind of talk about it. Leave that up to you, Tobias, if you want to crack open that egg or not.
Sure.
I'm reluctant to, but I'm kind of interested. So
yeah, I'll look into it. Who knows if there's anything to it? I'm sure I'll want to write an article about it or something. So
yeah, so there's that. Oh, I also saw the Northern Lights.
Oh, yeah.
You probably, I don't know if you guys did or not.
Um,
that area.
yeah, I feel like I didn't go outside because I was too tired. But Emily did. But they weren't that bright where we were. For whatever reason, I don't know if it's because she needed to go outside of the village, although there's not a ton of light pollution here, or if we're just kind of far south because we're in pretty far southern Wisconsin. But I have to believe wherever you are in Ohio would
And
have to
below
be
you, yeah.
farther south. Yeah, so I don't know.
Well, here's something that I learned about the Northern Lights. I'm gonna share it with you guys. And I didn't know this because, again, I live in Ohio. Why would I know this? The Northern Lights don't look the way that you think that they look. They don't light up the sky. It doesn't happen that way. So anytime like you see a picture of like the Northern Lights like from Alaska, it's strictly because of the same method that we use to be able to see it here, and that's through our phones. Like you cannot see it with your naked eye, really. You can kind of see a tent in the sky, but it's nighttime, guys. It's black outside. So you might see some green or some red tint to it. But even like the fantastical Northern Lights that you want to travel all the way to Alaska to see, they don't look that way. Did you know that?
I did.
I
And
did not.
so when I say that like Emily didn't see much, like she went out and like took some pictures and like they weren't spectacular. So, and I don't know if it was a timing issue or what the deal was, but
Yeah, super interesting. Well, we had people freaking out. They're like, this has been my dream my whole life. And it's like, well, don't get too excited because it,
all right.
doesn't look the way you think it does.
Right. And
So.
like, not to be that guy, but maybe aim a little higher there. Just saying.
It's just, well, if you're going to go to Alaska, go for all the Alaska. There's tons of cool shit out there,
That's your whole life's dream. I mean, like where do you go from there? Do you just die? I don't
You'd be real
I don't
sad
get it.
when you just see a green tent to your sky and you're like, what the fuck is
Right.
this? All the pictures lied. Well, no, they didn't.
Yeah, I mean maybe I don't know. Just dream bigger. That's all I'm saying.
Dream bigger. But I genuinely, I guess, didn't realize that. And once I learned it made sense. I was like, well, yeah, why the fuck would it light up the entire, it's not like an actual light, even though we call it that. Like, where would the glow come from? It doesn't. like a glow in the dark sky. That doesn't work that way,
Oh, that'd
unfortunately.
be amazing.
Right. Now that would be fucking cool, but it just doesn't work that way.
Right.
So Anyway, so last week you guys loved the episode. I guess I don't know. I don't know why I'm surprised. Um, I just think I'm not that interesting, and maybe it's because
What?
I think it's because I stand too close to these topics, and I've heard some people have some really amazing experiences. And I just assume you guys have heard everything that I've been through before. But I guess I forget that sometimes you're a new listener, right? So you haven't heard everything. You're not following me around, stalking me on every show I go on, which is a relief.
Or are they?
um, well, they could be, and maybe that's why this had so many downloads this week. But you guys really enjoyed the personal experiences, and I appreciate that. That feels very validating to me. I've had a lot of people reach out, acting like I'm a hero for sharing this stuff, and I'm not. I'm just a person, a weird person, but just a person. So we're gonna continue that theme, and now you guys get to learn a little bit more about our very own Tobias Whalen and his experiences with the strange and unusual.
Sure. So, well, I want to start by saying I am a hero for doing this. So you're right to think that, and how very smart of you. Great job.
You're gonna get lots of pats on the back, I promise. It does feel good. I can't. I'm human too. Like,
Sure. No, yeah, I mean, I think that people do respond really well to first person experiences. I mean, first of all, because if you're interested in anomalous phenomena, then the best evidence that we have to date is eyewitness testimony. And I know that that's unsatisfying to some people, but it doesn't make it any less true. It is what it is. But beyond that, if you've experienced it for yourself, if you've had some kind of paranormal experience or something, then I think hearing other people talk about it publicly can be very validating, very reassuring, and hopefully inspires people to be more willing to come forward with their own experiences. So, yeah, there is a lot of good that can come out of doing that. So, I'm not surprised people responded favorably.
I think because as validating as it is to me, I guess it's probably validating to you guys, and we're just all having a big virtual hug right now. It feels good.
True, absolutely. So, boy, talking about my experiences, I don't even know
Yeah.
where to start. I guess I'd have to go. Well, as they say, right? Like start at the beginning.
No,
So
tell it memento style. So you start backwards and until now. I'm just you do you.
I just somehow like I'll go into like a fugue state and
Yeah.
have this psychic experience where I just go to the end of my life and tell it backwards.
Yep.
It'd be crazy. You all find out how I die today.
It'll be something cool, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah. He died as he lived in front of the television. Um, so, oh, now I'm sad. No, okay. So for me, my experiences began a very, very long time ago. When I was a little kid. So when I was, 2, 3, 4 years old, my earliest memories, very earliest memories, were of being terrified to go to bed. Um, because when I did, I knew that something was going to come for me. And at that age, like these aren't so much full kind of cohesive memories as fragments of memories, because your brain at that age hasn't really developed to the point where you're making and retaining these long-term memories super well, right? Like it's most people don't have a super complete memory of being, you know, low single digits in terms of age. But I have fragments of memories from that time. And so it would, of course, be being terrified to go to bed, and then, being in bed, and, I would sleep with my covers over my head, even at that young age, because as we all know, that is an impenetrable force field to ward off monsters. Only, unfortunately, it is not particularly effective, or at least I didn't find it to be so, because I would remember things like seeing many hands sort of pressing in, from the outside of my blanket, or being woken up by the feeling of something digging painfully into my ribs, or being like lifted out of bed, um, seeing weird creatures. This is a bizarre one. I don't even think I've ever told anybody this one before. I remember one night. This was when we lived in Bloomington, Illinois, and it would have been 40 years ago. That's when we lived there anyway. And I remember waking up one night, and I peeked out from underneath my covers to see if there was anything out there, because of course I was constantly on alert for monsters, right? And I remember seeing this weird being. It looked like sort of a cross between a lion and a woman. Like it had and it's just lying there on my floor. And so it has like sort of the body of a lion, and then like the upper torso of a woman, and then it's just sort of this monstrous face. Um, and I looked for a second, and I was just like, I didn't know what to do. I was terrified, so I just hid under my covers again, and that was the end of it. At least as far as I know. And so from there, from those weird sort of fragmented memories, things progressed. I think if those very early childhood experiences had been the only thing that had happened to me, I could have written them off, right? I could have just said, okay, well, that was my childhood imagination, and I just got scared of the dark or something, as kids do. Okay, so whatever, like none of that's real. But it kept going, and it kept going. Well, to ongoing, really, like still happening, kind of in a way. And so obviously, as I got older, I was more capable of retaining memories of things that were happening to me, and so it got a lot it got a lot realer, right? Everything seemed, well, I couldn't write it off, and so I would see shadow people, for instance. Like I remember as a teenager being out mowing the lawn, like on a bright sunny afternoon, and I would see like a shadowy figure kind of like watching me behind our second garage. Now this is fast forwarding all the way to when we lived in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, and we had a second garage that my dad had built in the backyard, so we could store his old 66 Corvair that he had since like 1966, and then just a bunch of random crap, right? And I would be mowing the lawn in the backyard, and I would see like this shadowy figure kind of watching me, and then when it noticed that I had noticed, like it would just kind of duck behind the garage, and of course there's nothing there, and it was full daylight, and so no person would have been in shadow standing behind there, right? But this looked like just a sort of living shadow in the silhouette of a human being. Other things that would have happened at around that age, I mean, going through grade school all the way into high school, and well, um, and maybe even a little beyond. I was still terrified to go to bed, um, and that stayed with me. I remember there would be nights that I would see what looked like the heads of like traditional gray aliens over my bed. I had this unreasonable fear of the window in my bedroom, and I would become fixated on it and just think about how, there was something out there and something was going to come in through that window. And it's giving me chills to talk about it right now, honestly. Um, and I was just so scared of it. And you know how, have you ever been so terrified of something that you didn't want to look at it, but you couldn't look away? Like
Oh
that
yeah.
would be me with that window. Um, and yeah, I think by the time, oh boy, by the time I was out of high school, I was getting used to things enough to where I was no longer terrified of going to bed. I mean, nothing had really stopped necessarily, but I think I was starting to come to grips with what was happening. But before I continue, that was a lot that I just went through. So we can talk about that.
Sure. Yeah, let's talk about that. It's so as you get older, what I'm picturing in my head is people probably think I'm like a crazy like film nerd. I'm really not. But what I'm picturing in my head is in Home Alone when the furnace starts doing its bullshit to Kevin and he goes, "Shut up." And it does, you know? Like
Right.
it's still going on, right? The furnace is still possessed by demons, but he just doesn't care anymore, you know? It's,
Yeah. I mean,
um,
that's kind of it,
right.
when I
Just
was in
you're
grade
desensitized.
yeah, I think human beings can get used to almost anything, and I would
Yeah.
find ways to cope. Like all the way into junior high, I would get up out of bed and I would go sleep on the floor with the family dog because I felt safer doing that when she was by me. Um, and strangely enough, when I would go do that, nothing ever happened to me when I would get up out of bed and follow follow her around and just sleep wherever she was sleeping. Um, and of course, my parents didn't like that, so I would get yelled at. I wasn't supposed to do that, but it made me feel better, and I don't know if it actually had an effect on anything, but I don't recall anything weird ever happening to me when I did it. So who knows? Maybe she managed to scare off whatever it was. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think you get used to it. I think human beings are adaptable, and I think that we can get used to damn near anything. I think we can learn to exist in almost any environment, and I think that's kind of what I did. You know?
Well, we operate very much on just survival, right? So, like, your primal brain is like, oh, has this killed me yet? Oh, it hasn't. Well, it can't be that bad, you
Yeah,
know? But of course, to anybody else listening who's never had those experiences, I mean, it's fucking terrifying. And they're like, how could you get used to that? Um, so, we'll kind of back up a little bit. You have siblings, don't you?
I do.
How many siblings do you have?
I have two older siblings, a brother and a sister.
Okay. Have they ever had experiences? Have you guys ever talked about it?
Some, yeah, actually, this is interesting. So, yeah, let me tell you another thing that happened to me, and then I'll relate it to something else that happened that actually kind of blew my mind at the time
Sure.
because it confirmed what I had experienced. So, this was in my early 20s. I had moved back home. I was kind of deciding what I wanted to do, and for my next move in life, right? And and I'd gone to bed normally. And at the time, again, like we lived in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, which is like a smaller town, 20,000 people at that time. And so it's kind of a suburb, right? And there was plenty of ambient light that would come in from outside. Is my point? That's where I'm going with that. But I had gone to bed normally, only to find myself very suddenly awake, and there was no immediate and obvious stimulus that should have woken me up. Like there was no loud noise or very bright light or anything, and so I looked around, and it took me a second because I could see everything in my room, or at least like the silhouette of everything in my room from that ambient light. But everything looked a little off, and it took me a second, but I quickly realized that the reason for this altered perception was because I seemed to be floating a few feet above my bed. And so I looked to my left. I wasn't paralyzed. I could move. I decided under the circumstances that it probably wasn't a great idea to move too much in that moment, considering what seemed to be happening. And when I turned my head to my left, I see this figure, one of these shadow people, this all black silhouette of a man. And in that moment, I had the distinct impression that I wasn't supposed to be awake for this. And as I looked at this being, it reached its left hand out and put its hand on my chest. And as it did so, I interpreted that as, sort of a comforting sort of act, but I don't really know what its motivation was. How could I? And when it did that, I was lowered down to my bed, and then it just vanished. And I find myself lying there on top of my covers. I certainly hadn't gone to sleep that way. And at that point in my life, again, I thought if I was going to be hurt, I would have been hurt by now. I was fairly used to this kind of stuff happening to me. And so when I tell the story now and people ask, well, why didn't you freak out? I'd be losing my mind. I say, well, no, at this point, I wasn't really scared by stuff like that happening anymore. And so I knew that waking up my parents was pointless. They're like, that wasn't going to do any good. That would just make them mad. Um, and I wasn't hurt, and there was no immediate danger, and the thing seemed to be gone. And so I did the only thing I could do. I just kind of laid there for a while and thought about it, and then I went back to sleep. And that was that. And I didn't tell anybody about it until I finally wrote about it for our first for the Singapore Society, and then again in my book Strange Tales of the Impossible, which came out 2021. And so yeah, I didn't tell anybody about this, and I mean nobody, until I finally wrote about it, like years and years later. But a few years after this happened, I was in Ohio for my cousin's wedding. And my brother and I have always been friends. We're only 2 years apart. Like we have a lot of like friends in common from high school and such. And so like we just hang out, right? And so at my cousin's wedding, at the reception, we decided that we were gonna like man the keg, like you do in your 20s. And after the reception, we were like, well, hey, like let's keep this party going. Let's go to a bar or something and just hang out. And so we did. And while we were there, I just kind of out of nowhere, I think I was just like the right level of buzzed where I felt comfortable doing this. And I was just like, hey man, has anything weird ever happened to you at mom and dad's house? Because neither one of us lived at home at that point. And he kind of thought about it for a second. He's like, well, There was this one time where I woke up and there was this like shadowy person or something standing next to my bed. But I just assumed that I must have been dreaming or something. And so, I didn't really pay that much attention to it. And I still, like didn't tell him what happened to me, but when he said that, I was just like, holy shit. Like, is this has this stuff been happening to other people? Is this something that's been happening to other members of my family? Because that just blew my mind. And until that point, I think there was always a part of me that held out hope that whatever this was all in my head. And it may be strange to say it that way, because I'm sure there are people out there who are like, "Oh, I would love to have these kinds of experiences, like
Sure.
how exciting." But not really. And
Yeah.
um yeah, it was that moment where like I really couldn't just kind of write it off as maybe being something that just existed in my mind. Um and so yeah, that was powerful. Like that was a big deal. And much later, much later, after I was already writing about this stuff, uh my niece and then her mom, my sister, said that they had seen some shadow people around my parents' house. Like they had seen some similar stuff, but like that stuff all came way 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 later. So I don't know if it's possible that it could have been influenced by my writing or something. Like I have to, because of course they kept up with what I was doing, and so um, I have to allow for that as a possibility. But my brother wasn't. There was no way. I'd never told anybody. Um, and so his experience was completely independent from mine. Couldn't have been influenced by it. Whatever happened to him um, was the same thing that happened to me, and it happened to both of us separately,
Well,
without either of us knowing the other one had experienced anything.
right. I gotta say that is the most brother thing I've ever heard. My niece and her mom, and then you're like,
What?
oh, my sister. I get a kick out of that.
Maybe it's like a Midwestern thing. I don't know.
My niece and her mom, whoever that lady is, I guess she's
Right.
my
I've
sister.
only met her a couple of times. It's not important. No. Well,
Uh,
yeah.
but,
It is one of those
okay.
things where I believe them when they tell me they've had experiences
Sure.
of, I'm not saying that they're making it up or anything. It's just the investigator in me is like, well, they didn't tell me about this stuff until after I was writing about it. And so, there's that just leaves open this little this little bit of doubt. There's just a little bit of room for doubt now where I'm like, well, were they influenced by my writing? I can never completely rule that out,
Yeah.
but I
Well,
can with my brother.
I feel like that doubt, when you are a genuine experiencer, is always kind of going to be there, because you're the one that experienced it, and so you're always going to try to rationalize it away with something,
Right.
so, and it just sneaks in anywhere it can, right? And you're trying to fill the hole. I mean, it's like it's like it's like a lived experience of pareidolia, actually, which ends up being all over paranormal things, but your brain kind of fills in a face because that's what your brain's used to doing, and it's going to be no different when you apply it to any mystery in your life.
Oh, sure.
So that's, I think, completely natural. Okay, so going back, just not quite coming off the teenage years. I was just curious if there was any type of family history. Sometimes that does seem to be a theme. Sometimes it's not at all. It just depends on who you're talking to. But of course, I know people are going to think about, oh, you have a haunted house, right? That's going to be like their first thought is like, it's obviously it's your home that's doing it. Which you mentioned you had experiences in one home and then experiences in another home.
Right. Yeah, I don't think it was anything that's necessarily attached to the house, because
Right.
whatever it is has followed me to every single place I've ever lived in. I did have one other uh, experience at that house that I think is notable that
Sure.
I would mention. And so this is another one where I was wide awake. It was during that period where I had moved back home in my early 20s, and I at the time was working a second shift. Like I was working second shift in this warehouse, and so when I came home from work, like my parents would usually be upstairs in bed because I would work like 2 to 10, and but I would eat dinner when I got home, so I would just eat dinner late, and and I had gotten home and eaten and had eaten dinner in the kitchen, and then there's kind of an open floor plan between the dining room and the kitchen. There used to be a wall there, but my parents had it taken out so they could have this like little breakfast bar, which looks pretty nice actually. I can see why they did it. Um, but what that means then is between that and uh the fact that there's no door that closes between what would lead into the family room and then the stairs up into their room, is you had to be really careful with the lights that you had on, and that is to say you couldn't have any lights on out. So like if you were in the kitchen you could have like a little light on, like enough to see what you were doing, but my parents claimed that any like basically any light at all on the first floor somehow would make it into their room and wake them up upstairs, and they couldn't have it, and they couldn't
Oh,
sleep with their door closed, so you just couldn't have lights on. And I know I'm making them sound like crazy people, but they're not. They are just like the nicest Midwestern parents. This was just a thing that they didn't like, so whatever. And so what I would have to do is I had basically memorized where everything in the dining room was, and then once I made it to that open doorway that led to the family room and the stairs upstairs, and I could easily navigate my way upstairs. I didn't need to see that much, and so I would turn the light out in the kitchen and just walk through the darkness. And one night after having dinner there, I was going upstairs, so I turned the light out, and it's pitch black, especially right after you turn the light out, because your eyes haven't adjusted yet, and I'm navigating through the dining room, and I had memorized the dining room enough to the point where I knew exactly where to step, so like the wooden floors didn't creak or anything. Like I had it down, right? And you know how sometimes when you're walking through the dark in an environment that you're very familiar with, and there's something out of place, you can just feel it before you like trip over it.
sure.
Like I had that feeling. And so like there was something I was about to run into, so I stopped suddenly. And I heard this hiss. It was like well, I mean, it was like a person, like if a person were standing and just like hissed at you, right? And I felt this breath on my face, and it. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like I was startled. I think as anybody would be, like all like the hair on every hair on my body stood on end, and and literally I just like stood there and like just tensed up, and I just said, "Leave me alone," and and just kept going, and like and nothing bothered me, and I don't know if it's because it listened to me or what, but um yeah, that was another strange experience in that house. And I don't know what the thing would have looked like if the lights had been on. I mean, if it was a shadow person, you're not going to see it in the dark, right? I mean, you're not going to see
Sure.
anything in the dark, but especially not that. So who knows? But but yeah, that was a strange experience. But that kind of stuff, it followed me from place to place. It happened at our house in Bloomington, Illinois. It happened in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. It continued happening. Um, when I moved to Madison. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Do you want to? I don't. Do we? Should we unpack any of this before I continued? Like,
Yes.
are there
Uh,
questions and things?
I have questions. Yes.
Okay.
Well, this is more of a comment. I find it really interesting that some of these things seem to kind of have a like feline characteristics. I don't know if it means anything. I don't know what it means.
Hmm.
But that's at least two stories now you've told with some type of feline connection to it. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Just because you don't hear a lot of that. Um,
Fair.
my other question. So I know that you were a weird kid. I saw you being weird when you were a kid, and
Yeah.
you grew up. Let's be honest. Your generation. I'm not trying to single you out here on your birthday or make you
Oh
feel
boy.
bad.
Uh huh.
But you grew up when kind of starting to be really the peak of the paranormal, right? Um, X Files and Unsolved Mysteries, and I mean all of these like big media mainstream media type of things. You talked about the alien autopsy, stuff and how you watched it on TV back in the day,
Mm.
Um clearly at some point you had to have encountered people that at least had similar or adjacent experiences to yours growing up. I mean,
Yes.
what was that like? Was it
Well, I never met anybody in person
sure.
until I was in adult. Well, no, that's not true. I did have a couple of friends or one friend in particular that I met later who said that he had seen shadow people around his house too. Um, but mostly when I was a little kid, because remember this started when I was very, very young. I learned to read very early, and reading has been a passion of mine, my entire life. I still love to read. And so when I was in grade school, what I would do is I would go to the library, and I found a bunch of books there by people that a lot of our audience has probably heard of. I grew up reading books by like John Keel and Lauren Coleman and Whitley Strieber and Brad Steiger and all of these people who were writing these books because I went in search of answers to what was happening. Like I had a natural curiosity about the paranormal because what I was experiencing was seemingly paranormal. And so I discovered the authors first. Um, and and that I think helped me sort of come to grips, I suppose, with what was happening. It was certainly comforting to me to know that this was happening to somebody else, to other people, um, and that did help. And I think that it made me more willing to share it with my friends, like my friends that I trusted. Because okay, even though shows like Unsolved Mysteries were coming out in the 1980s, and then you had like Sightings and oh boy, what were some of the other, I don't know, whatever, like the other like paranormal TV shows and stuff that started coming out in the 90s. And of course you had the X Files. I mean, when the X Files came out, I think I was a freshman in high school. um Now, even though all that stuff was coming out, it wasn't like today. It wasn't, because you still like didn't want to talk about your personal experiences in public. There was not the widespread acceptance of this that exists now because of things like reality television. There
Sure.
was not. And so it still was just something that you shared with like your close friends, people you thought you could trust. because otherwise you were going to be judged and probably judged harshly. Um, and it was through talking with some of my friends that I discovered that some of them had experiences. Most of their experiences weren't really the same as mine, except for my one friend that I mentioned, who in high school had told me that he had seen some shadow people like around his house, which was sort of a weird ongoing thing for him too. I didn't know if there was any connection or not. There didn't necessarily seem to be, other than the similarity in the phenomenon. But it's interesting nonetheless. But yeah, like most of my friends were at least open-minded. Some of them had experienced things that maybe they thought could have been a ghost, or had seen some weird lights, or maybe they had an uncle who had seen a UFO or something, right? um but yeah, it was very much something that was talked about behind closed doors, and not in public, um, for fear of being ridiculed.
Sure. So, and of course, I know what people are thinking. Um, I already know how do you know this wasn't just sleep paralysis? I mean, that's a thing, right? We
Sure.
recognize that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the thing about sleep paralysis is that there are like markers that identify it. You know what I mean? So, I mean, first and foremost, I was never paralyzed. Like, I just wasn't. Um, Beyond that, so for instance, in that story I related about floating above my bed and everything,
Mhm.
right? Like, at no point during that was I unable to move. I felt fully awake. I was completely able to move. I was not paralyzed. Um, it lasted longer than you would expect a hallucination to last under those circumstances. So, um, the reason that scientists think sleep paralysis happens is that you have this chemical that your brain releases that paralyzes your body
Mhm.
to keep you from acting out your dreams and hurting yourself. And sometimes people can uh, begin to wake up while still under the effect of this this chemical that has been released for your own good. It's a good thing that our bodies make this. um and they'll find themselves in a sort of like waking dream state where they're paralyzed, uh but they have these sort of vivid hallucinations, often terrifying, you know um but the hallucinations don't last beyond the paralyzation, right? Because you wake up fully, and once you're awake, you're not hallucinating anymore, right?
Mhm.
So I was never paralyzed, and so now you don't have to be paralyzed to hallucinate. But if you hallucinate, say when you're just okay, let's say sometimes when you're falling asleep, this is relatively common. People will think that they like hear a voice, or they'll think that they hear somebody saying their name or something, right? That's a good example of a quick hallucination. You don't have to be paralyzed for that to happen, and then they're normal. Everybody has them, but they're very very fast. They're just these quick things that happen. They don't last as long as my experiences lasted. Um, and so, unless there is some kind of other new hallucination, like I'm a scientific marvel to be studied, because of these new hallucinations that I am experiencing. I'm not schizophrenic or anything, right? um, Then it
Totally.
seems unlikely that I would have been experiencing any kind of hallucination, and I wasn't. I certainly wasn't experiencing sleep paralysis, because again, at no point was I paralyzed.
Well, and I would also point out your experiences that you shared with us where you weren't asleep
Right.
or going to sleep. you
Yes.
know?
Right. Yeah, and it also happened when I would be fully awake up doing other things.
Right.
For sure.
So, but people wonder, and that's
Of
fine.
course.
This is the
Well,
right show to do that with.
I have something else to say about sleep paralysis too, because it's one of those things where it has become the swamp gas of paranormal
Yeah.
phenomena, right? Like it is the swamp gas colliding with a weather balloon in a temperature inversion,
And mass
reflecting
hysteria.
Venus, yeah, during a mass hysteria. Um, it's just one of those things that
Yeah.
people love to use to explain away everything. But the reality of it is, like so many phenomena that affect or interact with consciousness, we don't really have that good of an understanding of what it represents. I think, especially for people who listen to this show, we should consider the possibility of something like sleep paralysis not necessarily being an entirely internal phenomenon, but rather possibly leading to an altered state of consciousness that at times could make someone more open to experiencing the paranormal because of some of the things that people will report during these episodes and the consistency with which they will report these things. Like it's all very strange and just sort of swept under the rug and explained away. When really sleep paralysis in and of itself is a fascinating mystery.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's definitely it just doesn't quite fit. Like you said, the swamp gas weather balloon mass hysteria event. It just doesn't
Right.
quite check all the boxes, and that's valid. Like you said, it just didn't quite fit that narrative, and that's fine. Okay, so let's talk about. So we've gone up to about your early 20s. Let's talk about what's been happening. I'm not going to age you, but from then forward.
Right. So for the next 60 to 70 years,
Yes.
um, yeah, I mean, there has been more recent stuff in my personal life. We can talk about things that have happened to me on investigations too, because some of that stuff is pretty wild. But yeah, I've continued to experience anomalous things, just ongoing. This is a weird one. So I would have been in my 30s at this point, and I was staying at my parents' house because I was watching their dog for the weekend, and so I was watching TV. It was like the middle of the afternoon, and I was wide awake, completely wide awake, and before this, I had never suffered from narcolepsy or any sleep disorders, anything like that. And I'm watching TV, and all of a sudden, I just am overcome with this sudden, heavy, like fatigue and sleepiness, like out of nowhere. I'm wide awake, I'm watching TV, and then suddenly it's like I'm losing consciousness. Like I just like falling asleep in seconds, and I slump over onto the couch that I'm sitting on, and I like kind of lay down, and as soon as I close my eyes and my head hits the pillow there, because there's like throw pillows on the couch, um I see in my mind's eye, right, like in the darkness behind my closed eyes, I see what again looks like the head of like an alien gray. So like the same ones that I remember from years back. And it's weird because it starts out really, really small. And it seems like it's coming at me very quickly from a distance because I can see it getting bigger and bigger and bigger until like it's seemingly right in front of me. And when it's there, it says without moving its lips or anything. So this it seems like it's communicating telepathically. It says, "We are you." And then
Hmm.
once it has delivered this bizarre message, it suddenly recedes as quickly as it came, like back into the darkness, and suddenly my eyes open and I'm not tired anymore. Like I'm just as I was. And what the hell was that about? You know, like I don't know. It seemed like the delivery of some kind of weird message. I've thought about it a lot. You know, like we are you. Like what does that mean? There are a lot of hypotheses sort of bandied about regarding the nature of UFOs and aliens and the abduction phenomenon and all of that stuff and some of them are like, oh well, aliens are just humans from the future.
Sure.
um Humans were seeded here in the distant past by extraterrestrials or whatever. um and yeah, I don't know, like this could apply. I mean, we are you, that seems to imply that like what it was saying was that we are the same in some way, right?
And
um
you're like, hold on, buddy. I respect consent. Don't lump me in with you.
yeah. Yeah, I didn't ask my permission to jump into my mind and deliver that message. That's for sure.
No, that is really interesting. I mean, because it could, it could mean one of those things. Maybe that guy's name was also Tobias, and he was just trying to relate somehow.
Right. It's like it's just such a rare name, dude. I just wanted to mention it.
Maybe the letter U stands for something else. I don't know. We are ultra terrestrial, right?
He's just like, I don't have time to say the whole word. We are you.
Yeah. Um, the only person that could tell you what it means is, the guy that told it to you. And
Right.
I don't think he's called yet since
No, I
then.
haven't seen him since specifically.
you know.
So
But that is really interesting.
it's just
Or
bizarre. It's the kind of thing where like, I don't know. Again, like I think I put it in Strange Tales of the Impossible, but it's not the kind of story I tell very often out loud. Because it sounds fucking crazy.
yeah, it does sound
Like
crazy. I'm
oh,
just
okay,
kidding.
you were just knocked out seemingly, and then a message was beamed into your brain. Okay, cool. Like, they say as they back slowly out of the room I'm in.
And it's like, what, that's the message you're going to deliver. Like, you couldn't give me the winning lottery numbers. You couldn't tell me how to cure cancer. You can't tell me how to build a time machine. Like, that's what you're going to tell me.
I know,
I'd feel
right?
so gypped if I were you. I really would.
Well, I mean, oh God, do you remember how contactees, like mid-century contactees, would always receive like these seemingly profound messages
Oh, yeah.
from saucer occupants about like
Nuclear
world
war.
peace, yeah, like nuclear disarmament, environmental messages, all of that stuff. Like I think after that experience, like I understood how those people felt on a level that I had never understood before. Where I
Hmm.
was just like, okay, well, that was certainly a choice to tell me that specifically.
Right. What am I
Um,
supposed to do with this?
yeah, right. Like, so I don't know. I mean, there's so many weird ways it could go too, because one of the things that I've speculated about at length is sort of the idea that there exists this sort of ecosystem of consciousness, right? And within it dwell all of these different kinds of beings. So just like how in a forest you'll have different animals, within that specific ecosystem, or in the ocean or a desert or wherever, it doesn't matter. You would have all of these different creatures that dwell in this ecosystem of consciousness, and that there's a part of us that lives there too. If consciousness, for instance, is a force that exists outside or independently of our human bodies, and our brains sort of act to pick it up as a receiver or antenna or something, right? Then we are in contact with this ecosystem. And what if, when you die, it isn't that, I guess, like, what happens if, when you die, you're no longer inhibited from inhabiting that ecosystem because of the restrictions of your human body, like the part of you that is there all the time, or that overlaps with that ecosystem, is just sort of free. Like, people used to talk about becoming fairies, or like fairies being souls of the dead, right? So like, what if you could become a fairy? What if you could become a gray, or a mothman, or whatever the hell you want, because there would be no rules beyond the rules that exist in a dream, where you could be anything. So who knows, maybe that's what he fucking meant. I have no idea.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, suggest that, some type of spiritual sense. I think of um, oh my gosh, the alien interview guy. I think his name is Victor, who allegedly had the video of the alien being interviewed at Area 51. It's like clearly a puppet.
Yeah, I do love that video though.
It is. Me too. I think of that. But the guy himself, I don't think he's ever publicly, like, we don't know who he is publicly.
No.
But some of the stuff he said, even though his video's probably just a puppet, but some of the stuff he was saying about what these beings were saying they were, like that body, like that alien, that gray body that we saw, was more like a vessel that they kind of traveled in, kind of like in the Fire in the Sky movie, right? They've got the
Yeah.
gray suits. They don't actually look like that though. But that they were more of like a gaseous type of being, like that kind of went beyond our understanding. you know?
Sure.
And maybe we do become that, at some point. Who knows? I haven't died yet to know. So
Yeah, I'm in no hurry to find out. Like,
sure.
it's fine. I figure
Yeah.
I'll get there eventually.
And then you'll be like, oh, this
Oh,
fucking
cool.
guy.
I'm gonna be a Godzilla. Then Nate'll like me. Then
And
he'll
then-
respect me.
Then Nate
Finally.
will finally like you and respect you. Um, it took a while, but eventually. Yeah. What would you want to be if you could choose what you got to be?
Oh boy, I don't know.
I mean, Godzilla's a good answer, but
I mean, Godzilla would be cool. Oh man, it's gonna be something dorky. It'd be like a combination of my favorite superheroes or something. I'd be like Batman mixed with Wolverine or something.
and you're just superhero man.
Yeah. Just like, I'm closeted dork man,
I guess we'll find out. I don't know. It'll be your gray buddy will be there to greet you, and he'll be like, "See, I told you. Wasn't that hilarious when I came and told you about it?" You're
Yeah,
like,
right.
"No,
Well,
fuck
I mean,
you."
yeah, I know, right? Like, dick. But yeah, I mean, honestly, like, that explains so much to me too. Like, people will ask, like, oh, well, how come ghosts are wearing clothes, or what decides what clothes they're wearing, or what age they are when you see them, because they're not always the age they died at. And my answer to that usually is, well, okay, why are you wearing clothes in a dream? What decides how you look in a dream? I think it's the same answer. I think it's because when you are this disincarnate entity and you're no longer limited by the human form, by your physical body, and you exist in this ecosystem of consciousness, that the rules become like dream rules, where that you likely, if you are a ghost sticking around because maybe you're stuck here, or you've got unfinished business, or whatever the reason ghosts stick around for is, then you appear as you would in a dream of your, like when you're dreaming of yourself to other people. And maybe that's partially also influenced by what they expect to see. And so, maybe if the observer has heard enough about the spirit that's supposed to be haunting a place, because I very much don't believe that those interactions happen in a physical sense. That is to say, I don't think that ghosts are something that are like physical objects that reflect light and shit. I think that when people see them, they're seeing them directly with their mind, most likely. Um, then yeah, I mean, maybe your expectations are also uh, uh, coloring, or influencing is a better word, the manifestation of this spirit. So it's all dream logic. That's all it is. It's all dream logic, and dream imagery, and dream rules.
Yeah, I mean, why not? I think that's as good of an answer as any that that we get
Yeah.
out here. But receiving a message, it is a. Let's talk about that for a second. I mean, it's a blessing and a curse. A blessing only because as a researcher, as an investigator, it really drives you.
Mm.
Because you've had this really strange experience, and now you've been told something, and you're like, well, what the fuck does that mean? And it's a curse because it sounds crazy, and that sucks. The stigma with it, definitely. You can't just go telling people that you've had these entities give you messages before. It sounds fucking nuts. So when you are a sane, logical person, it's a really tough thing to grapple with. So I feel you there.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing too, is one thing that I've always tried to avoid is sounding like one of those crazy cult leaders that pop up in the paranormal a few times every generation, where they're just like, oh, look how special I am, look at all the extra special attention I get, I'm your conduit to the other world, I'm the one who gets the messages, you
Yeah.
know and it's I don't know, I just don't vibe with that, and I don't want to be that guy. And so I think that's I mean, in addition to what I would assume to be the stigma attached to stuff like this, I also just I don't want to be that guy, and I'm not saying that I am, or that anybody who just talks about their experiences is. I just think that I'm hyper aware and alert of purposefully not being that person.
I think like the lack of narcissism is kind of what makes you different from a cult leader. Because let me tell you, if I had $1 for every time I went on a show to talk about my Mothman stuff, and I stop myself in the middle of it and go, my God, I sound like a cult leader right now, and maybe I am, because it does start to sound very culty, but as I guess I can't speak for you personally, but knowing that you were one of the weird kids growing up, I imagine that you've probably struggled with your sense of self in your life. And because you don't have that narcissism mixed in with there, you're not trying to utilize this for some personal gain, whereas
Right.
like cult leaders, whether or not they've received messages, I can't say. But even if they genuinely have received them, then they go and use them for personal gain. And
Right.
you don't want to be that person. Nobody wants to be a cult leader, really. I mean, we joke about it, but nobody actually wants to be one.
No, not at all. And also the idea that you need someone else to facilitate contact with the otherworldly.
Yeah.
is so, I mean, it's borderline offensive to me. It's
Yeah.
so ludicrous. If you're listening to this, you don't need anybody.
No.
You really don't. Like, if you are interested in this stuff, you don't need anybody to do it for you. You don't need anybody to act as interpreter or tour guide or facilitator, any of that shit. You can just do it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The amount of people I find trying to find like psychics and tarot readers, and I'm just like, you can just do that shit yourself. Like,
Yeah,
send me a
absolutely. You
message. I'll tell you
should.
how.
Yeah, it's the only, actually, and doing it yourself is the only way to actually have a chance of getting something that's probably useful to you.
Yeah, right. Exactly. No, you're absolutely right. Not to say that tarot reading isn't exhausting. It is when you do it for other people, but you can just do that shit yourself. Now, if you want to pay somebody else, that's cool, but just know that you don't have to.
Sure. Yeah, I mean,
Um,
yeah, I can't even imagine like paying somebody to do it. Like,
no.
I would let somebody do it for free if they wanted, but I would probably just do it myself.
Right. But absolutely. And there's nothing that like myself or Tobias, I mean, can I can't conjure these guys up. Tobias can't conjure these guys up. If we
No.
could conjure them up like that on a dime, do you think that we would be telling you guys right now that we need 5 people to sign up to the top tier of our Patreon over at patreon.com/Wednesdays Talk? Because we wouldn't need you to do that because we would be so filthy rich.
It's true. We wouldn't need it at all.
So I'm just saying. Um, okay, so that is that's interesting. I don't know how. I mean, how does that make you feel? How does it make you feel that you were told
Uh
that?
I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it anymore. I mean, I did for a while, and um you know, I think that fundamentally, like, really, it it's not a scary message, like, it's not particularly frightening. It was unsettling feeling like I was not completely in control for that
Mhm.
moment, but again, I wasn't terrified, although there is a sort of learned helplessness that comes along with this, in a way where, when you're having an experience, you kind of know there's nothing you can do about it, so you got to write it. You just got to write it out, you know. Um, and yeah, so it wasn't like scary or anything. It is. It's an interesting message, and it's one that I have, like I said, thought about quite a bit. And so I think overall, um, it's been enlightening, I suppose, is the word. I think it has encouraged me, and maybe this was the whole point. I don't know, but it has encouraged me to sort of take my thinking outside of the box, and to get weird with it in the way that I just described to you. So maybe that was the whole point. Maybe it was, hey, we can't, like, we can't just give it to you. You got to earn it. But here's
Weird that you said
here's
that.
yeah, like, here's the key, but you got to unlock the door.
That is really weird that you said that.
Why?
Well, I'll make it quick. It's a sidebar. Um, One time I was gearing up to go to Point Pleasant for a weekend of filming. Okay, and I have a special. Speaking of tarot cards, I have a special tarot card deck that I use, and I'm not gonna name what the show is, but there was a show on my TV, and a paranormal show. And while I'm packing and kind of, getting in the mood, right? I'm excited. I'm gonna go hang out with my friends. We're gonna chase the Mothman. I decided to pull out my work tarot card deck and start to pull cards from it. And while I'm pulling cards from it, it wasn't so much what the cards were. It was more what was on the cards because it is like a cryptid tarot deck. Okay, so all of the cards that I got were topical to what was going on. So it was all like the winged beings. And while I'm sitting there, somebody on the paranormal show is supposedly making contact with an entity. I think it might have been Injured Cold, allegedly. And I just get this weird I got a weird message. I get a weird message. And the message was, we don't like so and so person on TV. She doesn't deserve it. And
Hmm.
it was very weird. And I still don't really know what that means. Um, but I did reach out to that person and tell them that, and they never responded.
Can you imagine getting that message and just being like,
They don't like you.
"Oh,
Yeah, they told me they don't like you, but yeah, that's like I said, interesting that you mentioned earning it, because that has kind of been a theme in my life somewhere, along the way. I don't know what the fuck it means, but here we are.
sure." Well, I mean, I think, like, without delving too far into the esoteric or occult, I mean, this has been um, embedded in spiritual practice for all of recorded history. Like the idea of, this sort of like spiritual apotheosis, this evolution, of attaining enlightenment. Like it's not something that can be given. It's something that has to be earned. So I don't know. Maybe that's part of it.
Interesting. And I don't like to talk about those things, really, I'll be honest with you, because
Oh, I know. Me neither.
I really don't understand it. It's so far away from what the types of things I usually talk about and believe in. And I just tell people that I don't really like to talk about that stuff because I don't really get it.
Right.
you
Well,
know?
I mean, for me, my spiritual like beliefs and practices are something that are very personal. And so I just don't talk about them a lot in general on stuff like this. Like one on one, sure. I'm happy to talk to people. But yeah, it's just I'm just honestly, and I know this might be weird to say, or be weird to hear coming from a guy with a podcast, but like I'm a fairly private person and I don't really put my private business out there very often. So yeah, when it comes to stuff like that, like I don't talk about it very much. I don't make things about me that often.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It feels weird to do. Well, is that, not to, you know, switch gears, but, is that the last notable experience that you've had? Have you had more since
you
then?
wish that was the last notable experience I had. No. That was a weird way to say that. No, I have had stuff since.
Okay.
There's another sort of cluster of things, and this happened even more recently than the weird message. And this stuff, I don't know if this is related. It could be a coincidence, but this stuff all happened after um, 2017 when we were investigating the Mothman sightings, right? And so one of those was I was taking Bullet out for a walk because we used to live in an apartment in Madison, and so we didn't have like a fenced in yard or anything where we could let the dog out. He needed to be walked, and so I would, well, at this point Emily and I are together, so we would usually take turns walking him, but he got walked like a minimum of 3 times a day, sometimes more, which was good exercise. So like that was nice. But it's also a pain in the ass when like the weather sucks.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so I'm taking Bullet out for his walk, and this would have been really in the early evening, I believe, um, when you could still see, but it was getting later, right? But like you could still see fine, and we had just left, and we walked down the hill because that's the way he wanted to go. He usually likes to go up the hill, but this time he goes down the hill. And I probably mentioned this before, but whenever I would walk Bullet, like I always had my head in a swivel because we lived in a popular neighborhood and there's always people walking. And he's a super friendly dog, but like a little too friendly. So he would always want to like meet and jump on people. And like I am not about meeting strangers. Like when I'm just trying to walk my dog so he'll pee and I can go home, right? Um and so I'm looking around and we get to the bottom of the hill and I turn around and I see these shadowy figures standing up at the top of this hill, sort of across the street, because you could see it to the top of the hill and then across the street to where this park across the from the community center was, or well, is it's still there. And they're standing next to this chain link fence, and it looked like these shadowy beings in like hoods and cloaks, right?
Oh no.
Yeah, and they're just kind of standing there, and they seemed like they were looking at us, and I'm just like, "What the shit?" And then they suddenly vanish, right? And they're just gone. And I was like, "Okay, well, I don't know, like that's a thing, I guess." And I didn't know what to make of it. I'd never really seen anything that looked like he was wearing a cloak and a hood or anything weird before, right? Um, but sometime later, I thought of that experience again because I was talking to this retired Chicago police officer, David Ramos, and he was telling me about an experience he'd had back in the 70s by the North Branch of the Chicago River. He was down there playing with some friends of his, and they were relatively, young kids, I think, like preteens. Um, and they were all throwing chunks of concrete into the river, but he didn't feel safe doing that, so he stayed up on the path. And he saw this being on there that at first he thought was wearing these big goggles, like red goggles, and had like a cape or a cloak. But it wasn't until it spread this cloak out that he realized that it was wings. And what he was looking at was this winged humanoid that wasn't wearing goggles, but instead really just had these large red eyes. Um, and it flew up, and that was his sighting. And when I took that report, I thought back to that experience, and I was like, well, they were all black. I couldn't make out detail. I mean, were those cloaks? Could they have been wings wrapped around them? I don't know. I mean, maybe. I can't rule it out. Um, but yeah, I don't know. That was a weird one. Around that same time, I remember waking up one night, and this was unusual because this time I actually couldn't move. So this is a rare instance of me waking up and not being able to move. So I wake up and there's this super bright light. It's like when you go to the eye doctor and they shine that super bright light in your eye.
Okay.
Like that's what it seemed like. So I wake up and like I'm on my side and I can't move, and I think that's weird because that doesn't happen. And it seemed like something was shining this bright light into my eyes, and in that moment, I was like, I thought to myself, I don't think I'm supposed to be awake for this, and I just gave myself chills again, and as soon as I thought that, I lost consciousness. So I don't know. Yeah, people could write that off in a lot of different ways, but like just thinking back to it and how real it seemed, I don't. It sticks with you. It's difficult. We've talked about this, where if somebody wasn't there and they didn't experience it, then they can't understand the significance it had to me in experiencing it. And that's okay. And that's why I understand if somebody hearing me tell that story or any of my experiences goes, okay, well, I don't think you're a liar or anything, but I think that this explanation, this prosaic explanation might work, you know. Like I get that. I get why people think that. I might think that too if I was them, but I'm not, and I was there, and it doesn't seem to fit because of my experience. Um, some easy, sort of dismissive, prosaic explanation. Um, and then I had one more that I think is really noteworthy, and we should talk about. Um, and that was again, I was in bed, and I was actually woken up this time because Emily was talking, and she was talking in her sleep, which she does sometimes. We both do sometimes, but she does a little bit more than me. I'm just saying, no, it's not a competition, but I'm a quieter sleeper. That's all I'm saying. Um, but anyway, so I wake up because she's talking, and I'm like, okay, is everything okay, sweetie? And I roll over and I realize she's talking in her sleep. And I'm like, oh, well, all right. Well, this is no big deal. I'm just going to go back to sleep. And so, but I'm wide awake at that point because, she woke me up by talking. I like got up on my elbows, like when you're lying down and you like get up on an elbow
Sure.
to like look over at somebody and be like, hey, are you okay? Yeah. And so I'm fully awake and I'm like, oh, all right. Well, that's okay. That's no big deal. I'm going to go back to sleep. And so I uh, lay back down, and I'm getting comfortable again. Like I'm on my stomach, and I'm like shifting around, trying to get comfortable so I can close my eyes and go back to sleep. When I see out of the periphery of my vision this hand come up. So I'm on my stomach. My head is on the pillow, but it's turned, so I'm looking to my left, right? And I see this hand come up from um like down by my waist, but it would be moving parallel to the floor. And it comes into my vision, and it looks like this like sort of black, like crusty, scaly kind of hand, right? Um, and when I see it, as soon as I see it, I start to feel that old familiar feeling of like something digging into my sides, and then like hands underneath me lifting me out of bed. And when that happens, again, I'm not paralyzed, as will become very apparent here shortly. When that happens, I like lose my shit, right? Like I don't get scared by much, but like I was not having this. Like I was frightened. And so I start frantically slapping at these hands lifting me, right? Like, and as I'm doing that, I can feel myself hitting what felt like arms,
Ew.
like I was connecting, like I wasn't hitting the sheet or the blanket or anything. This felt like hitting somebody's solid ass arm. And when I started doing that, the hand that was in front of my face, like just slowly receded the way it came, and then they were gone. And I was like, I was hitting air. Um, and so those all happened, around the same time, like not in the same week or anything, but within, I don't know, months of each other, probably.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and I've had other stuff that's happened to me. I've had some stuff that really felt like dream visitations from people I know who have passed away, and other sort of weird communications, like in that type of environment from other things. But I think those are those are probably some big highlights for like personal experiences regarding whatever set of phenomena seems to be sort of focused on me or focused on happening around me and to me. I've had a lot of stuff that's happened on investigations and stuff, but that should totally be its own episode because it would take at least
Yeah.
as long as this.
Yeah. No, I've definitely thought about sitting and like trying to write everything out. But what's crazy what kind of jogs your memory because you just going back to that Kevin McAllister moment, it just kind of becomes normal. And
Yeah.
you just forget about these weird isolated incidences just like you do your breakfast from 10 years ago on the state.
Oh, totally.
But so does and we won't get too into it, it's theirs to tell. But does Emily have these shared experiences with you?
No.
Okay.
Um, she didn't grow up with any of this stuff. Not like this.
Sure.
She had a, a visitation from her grandfather after he passed.
Okay.
But otherwise, I didn't talk about the weird apparitions we saw. Okay. Otherwise, she saw a weird apparition like in broad daylight when we lived in Madison. I had I I had an experience like that too. I think I've told you this before, but I'll tell it again for the sake of completionism.
I think I know what it is, but go ahead.
Oh, it is. You do. I think you do know. So
Yes.
this was again when we lived at that apartment on Brewerly Street in Madison. So between like Williamson and Jennifer. And again, I'm out walking Bullet. This time it's like broad daylight. It's middle of the afternoon or something. And my head's on a swivel as always because I don't want people sneaking up on us because then the dog's going to go all bonkers and I'm going to have to interact with strangers. God forbid, right? and so I'm looking around, and this time we're at the top of the hill that we lived on. So like our apartment was like situated halfway up a hill. So this street like goes up a hill, and our apartment was like halfway up it. So when you walk out our front door, you can either go down a hill or up a hill. But either way, you're interacting with a hill. And this time we had gone up, and so we were at the same intersection where I had seen the shadowy cloaked figures, right? And we would have been right across the street from where they had seemed to be. But anyway, so Bullet's sniffing around one of his favorite like telephone poles that he liked to pee on. And so he's sniffing around, and I'm waiting for him. And I'm looking around, and I see like half a block away this lady kind of like power walking towards us, like she's out exercising, and she's dressed like all in pink. She got like a pink like tracksuit or something on, like exercise wear, and like a headband. And she looked like maybe she was like middle aged. So she could have been in her 30s or 40s. So middle aged ish, I guess. Like shoulder length brown hair and glasses. And otherwise fairly average. I guess I would put her on like the I don't like the curvier side of average in build. And she's kind of power walking towards us. And so I see her, and I glance back down to see how Bullet's doing. And like just real quick, just like a split second, just to glance at him. And then I look back, and she's gone. She's vanished. And so I'm like, what the fuck? Like where could she have gone? And so Bullet was peeing, and he finished up peeing, and that only took a few seconds. And so I was like, all right, dude, like, let's go. And we go across the street so I can walk down the block and try to see where she went, like at that point, I didn't want to seem like a weirdo creep. So if like somehow she had just ducked behind something for some reason, I didn't want to come up on her suddenly. And that's why I crossed the street. And
Be like, I found you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, right. That's a good way to get maced, And so Yeah, like I just I didn't want to I didn't want to be that weird about the apparition I saw. And so I'm looking and there's no place she could have gone. Like she wasn't like between in like any of the houses. She look, there wasn't time for her to like to just disappear. She couldn't have got into a house that quickly. She didn't just like walk down between any of the houses. There wasn't even time for that. I mean, seriously, I should have seen her, even if she had just like quickly walked up a driveway or something. I should have seen her because I didn't take that much time. It was just a glance down at Bullet and then right back up, right? Just so I could try to get a sense of how quickly she was going to be on us. I mean, literally, she would have had to have just like ninja rolled into some bushes, maybe, but obviously that didn't happen. So
Did
yeah, it's
Bullet
just a
seem to notice her at all?
oh, he was real. No, he was
He was
doing what
busy.
he was doing.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, he was into the telephone pole. I mean, again, like even if she had been a normal human physically there, he wouldn't pay attention to her until she
Okay.
was like next to us. You know?
Aloof. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
but Emily has that kind of that shared experience with you, but on a different occasion.
yeah, and so sometime after that, she was a walking bullet again, and she was actually by the community center, so like kitty corner across the street from where I was, because this was at an intersection. And she was outside of the community center, and if memory serves, like her experience was basically the same, but she saw what was either okay, it was either like an old timey like newsboy or a hipster. It could have been either because they look the same. But but he was standing there. I think he might have been smoking or something too. And but don't quote me on that. And and yeah, it was the same experience. Like the dude was there and then he vanished.
Yeah, we got into some interesting speculation about it because we talked about it during our like our time travel episode,
Right.
which was interesting. But very odd. I was just kind of curious if maybe there was some connection there between you guys having similar experiences, or if you're having them in the home, is she seeing them too? Is she having those? But everybody can have their own set of experiences. That's pretty normal. So
Oh, sure. She hasn't experienced like any of this weird stuff that's kind of happened to me specifically.
yeah,
Which I mean, I don't know. Like it seems very focused on me in particular, so that doesn't really surprise me.
sure.
That she hasn't, you know. Yeah, she slept through a lot of it, I guess.
She's
So
just
like
like,
that's
"What? That
cool,
happened to you? Okay."
right? Like, oh, don't worry about it. You were asleep. It's fine.
Oh, married life.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, with everything you shared with us tonight, I mean, what do you think about your experiences? What do you think is going on here? I'm sure I know how diplomatic you like to be, and I respect the hell out of you for it.
Sure.
But surely you've got your own personal, even if they're biased takes on what maybe is going on.
They're not just biased; they're toe biased.
They're so biased. Nice.
Ah,
That needs to be on a shirt.
it should be on a shirt. That's right. Yeah, you can't get that kind of wit on any other podcast,
No,
people.
nowhere.
You
That's
are very, very lucky.
the
So
gold
blessed.
standard.
Hashtag blessed. Um, yeah, so I don't know that I have a lot of beliefs. I have lots of speculations. And really I think that I kind of covered them when I was talking about consciousness before. I currently, and like my opinions and things, like they change constantly with
Sure.
like new information, or if I hear a new interesting hypothesis or something someone has theorized, then I like to keep a very nimble mind, and so like I'm open reevaluating things with the introduction of new ideas and new evidence, right? Um, and so yeah, I don't know. I think that the one thing that does seem apparent is that whatever this is, it is using consciousness as a medium of communication and communicating directly, you know, through consciousness. Um, and beyond that, I really don't know. I think that what somebody might think this is really would depend on their own particular beliefs and biases and perspective. You know, like if you were really into UFOs, you're likely to look at this and view it as um, you know, an alien abduction experience or a series of alien abduction experiences and related visitations. If you're into parapsychology and ghost hunting, then you're likely to look at this as you know, a series of hauntings or a spirit attachment or some kind of non-human spirit uh, um, that has been interacting with me, or a series of those. Um, but all of those, you know, are just sort of explaining one mystery with another, which has kind of been, you know, my whole point, like since I've been doing this and taking that sort of Fordian perspective, right? You know, so, you know, if you look at like the work of John Keel, who of course was very heavily influenced by Charles Fort to the point where he just like quoted him constantly, um, then, you know, like you should be familiar with the idea that there are commonalities and relationships. Some of them, you know, seemingly hidden, but others not so much, that seem to exist between all aspects of the paranormal. You know, like everything from UFOs to cryptids to ghosts and hauntings all have these weird things in common. And I think that my lifetime of experiences sort of exemplifies that, you know, because I don't think it's easily categorized into any of those. And I think that could speak to a larger truth, you know. Something else is there, and maybe it's that ecosystem of consciousness I was talking about, or maybe it's something else. I don't really know, but I do know that has been reinforced by the testimony of many of the witnesses with whom I have spoken, um, who, you know, many of whom, after being asked, "Hey, have you ever experienced anything else weird?" will come out with this unprompted narrative that is very, very similar to what I have experienced throughout my life. You know, some of the details will vary, but um, the overall narrative of paranormal incursions is eerily similar. So who knows?
Yeah, there's kind of almost a selfishness when we kind of keep these stories close to us, because when you are interviewing somebody with an experience, it kind of helps that they don't know your story, you know.
Yeah,
Because then that way you kind of get a weird, like I said, a very selfish validating experience out of it. You know, so it, and I think, you know, that's also probably part of why, you know, this can be just subconsciously difficult to talk about at times. You know, you let the secret out, now everybody knows. You know, it's like me trying to find Indrid Cold. Now anybody that looks like a white man can approach any of my booths and go, "It's me, I'm Indrid." And what choice do I have but to go, "Yep, that's him," you know?
yeah, right.
So, you know, same type of situation. They kind of, you know, you make yourself vulnerable by giving people the opportunity to kind of copy your experience and, you know, talk as if they've had the same one. So when you get people that don't know really, then it's much more genuine. Um, yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. We could all be, one of us somewhere could be right on the money, and we've got it all figured out. But I think the bigger possibility is that none of us know a damn thing.
Yeah. Well,
And I hate that. I do. Obviously, you get into it because you want kind of some answer. You kind of want to understand it a little bit somewhere.
right.
And the reality is that might not ever happen, and that's hard because these are life-changing experiences. But that's why people come here and they listen to the shows, and at minimum it gives you some comfort to know that there's at least a community of people that have very similar experiences.
Oh, for sure. I'll tell you, like, well, like I've said before, I try to live a balanced life. I don't make the paranormal my whole personality
Yeah.
because you can't, I've got all kinds of other things that I enjoy as well. And so, you know, because of that, I guess if I never got concrete answers in a way that was, like scientifically provable or something, like I would be okay with it, like I still consider this a life well lived. Um, but even more than that, I'm not unsatisfied with what I feel like I have learned from these experiences, because they do seem to take the form of a sort of like, rite, or some sort of ritualized practice almost, where you've got these like rites of passage, like rites of enlightenment, things that you have to overcome, things you have to puzzle out for yourself. um, there is a sense of accomplishment, like for me, in having had these experiences that have forced me to think about reality in a way that otherwise I almost certainly would not have.
Yeah.
And again, maybe that's the whole point. I don't know.
Yeah, that could certainly be the case. It is a very interesting. I know what I've learned is that there is unequivocally something fucking weird going on. Can't tell you what
Yes.
it is. Can't tell you why it is. Just that there is. And like you very much just said, I also would not have thought that unless it happened to me.
Right.
So and maybe that's it. Maybe that's the secret, just to have that knowledge, I guess.
I mean, it's it's not nothing. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
I think it's better than some people will put on when you talk to like the real hardcore nuts and bolts people who demand something that they can hold in their hand and send to a lab and stuff. Like that's great. Like that's all well and good, and I know that advances science and everything, but um, in terms of personal experience and the sorts of personal evolution that can be gained through that, yeah, I this has definitely affected my life, and I'm absolutely a different person with different modes of perceiving and thinking than I would be otherwise. And that is important, damn it. It is.
Yeah.
So I wish that for everybody.
Well, any final thoughts or anything else you forgot to add to any of your experiences or anything?
Oh boy. Sure. I don't think there's anything I forgot to add, but I'll think of something at like midnight and then get super upset that I forgot to mention it. But no, in terms of, yeah, boy, anything I would want people to know about this, first and foremost, and I've said this before, and we've both reinforced this. but like your experiences are yours, and you can and should look for explanations, but you're not obligated to accept any that don't fit. And never let anybody tell you otherwise. Not me, not Asherz, not anybody. Not that I think we necessarily would try, but if we did, you just tell us to get fucked.
Yeah.
Because the reality of the situation is you were there, you had the experience, and maybe not what happened to you, but what your experience with the phenomenon, whatever it was right. Like your experience, the way you experienced it, and nobody else can tell you that you experienced it a different way, because you're you and they're not. And of course the other side of that is you can't expect people to believe your explanation for something that didn't happen to them. So if you're explaining your experience to someone and they say, "Oh, I think that was sleep paralysis," you can't get mad at them. You just can't. You just got to be like, "Okay, that's cool. Like I get it. It was a weird experience, and I don't have any proof or anything other than my experience. And so if that's what you choose to believe, then like, hey, that's cool. We can still be friends, as long as they're not being a jerk about it. Like if they're being a dick, then again, and just go back to telling them to get fucked. But yeah, I mean, it's just we need to be open-minded and understanding of everybody's perspective in this field and why they feel the way that they feel, because right now the only evidence we have is experiential. That is to say, it is based on the personal experiences of people who have encountered it. And while that is powerful to the individual, Lord knows I understand how that is powerful to the individual, it doesn't mean much to anybody else who hasn't experienced something similar. So
Yeah, they just people. If you don't know, then you don't know. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and when you get upset, it doesn't help matters. As a matter of fact, if you just go, "Hey, that's fine. You don't have to believe it. I just know what I've lived," I can guarantee they're gonna have a lot more respect for you at that point. So, anyway, well, thank you for our Jerry Springer moment, Tobias. Every week. You and your final thoughts.
I do love a good Springer moment.
Who doesn't? Who
Right.
doesn't?
I mean, I was going to throw a chair or something later.
Jerry. You got to.
Absolutely.
Explaining that to my 12-year-old is very difficult.
I bet. So we used to watch people fight on TV for fun. No, not in a scripted show, just like people on a talk show. I don't know. It was the 90s.
They used to beat each other's ass, and they were gross every time.
Yes. It was. They were always gross. It was always the weirdest stuff.
Well, who the hell else is going to go on a
cheating
show
on
like
people
that?
with people that nobody should be cheating on anybody with. It's just, I don't know.
Anyway, all right. Well, with all that being said, guys, if you have any questions or of course, great praise and support, go reach out to Tobias, even though he hates people.
I love people. I'm just an introverted person by nature.
So go wish him happy birthday, and at least that's
Sure. I love it when people are nice to me.
You do like it when people are nice to you. I think most people do, but
yeah, that's fair. Most people like it when people are nice to me. That's good to know.
Unless it's a kink thing, which does exist. And if that's your thing, don't do it without consent, right? So leave me and Tobias out of it.
True.
Anyway, with that being said, guys, we'll see you back here next Wednesday.